Hello and welcome to ABP Live. I have with me today Ambassador of the European Union to India, Ambassador Ugo Astuto. Welcome to ABP Live, sir, and thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you for inviting.
Thank you. So let me first ask by saying, asking you rather directly, where do you think the bilateral ties between India and the European Union is headed, both in terms of strategic as well as business, keeping in mind the fact that there is a war going on in the background, which initially the thinking was that, it will probably end in 6 months or a year's time. But now we've seen the war gone on much longer than expected, and it is also becoming deadlier by the day. So does it have an impact? And also, even without it, how are the relations going on?
Well, I'm happy to say that the relations are growing day in, day out. We have seen considerable momentum gained in our strategic partnership over the past couple of years. We see this strategic partnership gaining in scope, in breadth, and in depth. Let me mark here, for instance, as a particularly landmark moment, the Porto summit, where the 27 heads of state and government met with Prime Minister Modi. That was virtual, still during COVID time. But it was a very significant moment where we had our unanimous view is in Europe and shared by the Indian leadership that we need to work together. As like-minded partners, I think we need to work together and to shape the world agenda to address global challenges. So that was the moment, for instance, where the decision was taken to relaunch the free trade agreement negotiation, which is currently ongoing.
Right.
And then a bit later than that, we had the president of the European Commission visiting Delhi, opening the Rasina dialogue. That was 2022.
Right.
And on that occasion, Prime Minister Modi and the president of the European Commission decided to launch a new initiative, the Trade and Technology Council. There is a meeting at ministerial level that discusses the nexus between trade and trusted technology. A very topical issue now, as we try to face the need to establish resilient and secure global supply chains. We have another TTC in place with US. The only other one we have established is with India. And I think that's evidence, that's testimony of the importance of the relationship as it is today. You mentioned the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Well, clearly that has upended all the international scenery.
Right.
It's an extremely serious violation of the UN Charter. And on top of it, by a permanent member of the UN Security Council. So it's extremely important that the international community comes together and makes it clear that this violation cannot be tolerated. As far as we are concerned, as European Union, we condemn this aggression in the strongest terms. We have supported Ukraine. We are supporting Ukraine. We are supporting Ukraine politically, militarily, financially. We will continue to do so. And we have put in place sanctions in order to affect the capacity of the Kremlin to continue this war.
Right.
As to India, we particularly appreciated the statement made by the Prime Minister some time back about the fact that it is not a time for war. And at the time of the G7 summit in Japan, Prime Minister Modi also met Prime Minister Zelensky. And once again, he made it clear that India will do whatever it can to put an end to the conflict, which I think is very important.
Why am I asking this, Ambassador, is because of the fact that we have heard many European countries asking India indirectly to be part of the sanctions. Rather, on the contrary, we have seen India gone ahead and increased its business with Russia in terms of oil purchases also. Now, India also has its own reason why it did so. And now we are seeing Pakistan also joining in and buying the Russian oil. Does it bother European Union in terms of what India is doing, or you think these are sovereign decisions? Although there can be dialogue going on with India as to what needs to be done if the war really goes longer.
Look, as you said, India has its own reasons, and I think we respect and understand the particular Indian position. What we try to do as European Union and more broadly as a price cap coalition is to keep the price of oil stable globally, and at the same time make sure Russia does not gain any undue profit through its trade
Right.
in oil, because this profit would go to fuel and finance the illegal aggression against Ukraine.
Okay.
And I think so far the price cap has shown its ability to achieve its objectives. We have seen a stabilization in the global oil prices. I think India has also indirectly benefited from it, as it's currently purchasing Russian oil at a discount. More broadly, we continue to have a conversation with India because, as you said, the aggression is continuing. We have incredible devastation happening, mounting evidence of war crimes. So this has to stop, and the Russian troops need to withdraw. As I said earlier, the voice of India is important and influential. So it's very important what the Prime Minister said. This is not a time for war. This must stop like that.
It's interesting, Ambassador, that you talk about the fact what Prime Minister said last year on the sidelines of the SCO summit, of course, to President Putin, that this is not an era of war. And he also met President Zelensky in Japan this time on the sidelines of the G7 summit. But do you now feel that now that India is already the chair of G20 and will be hosting the summit, we know for a fact that maybe President Zelensky will not be coming in person, but do you think that he should be given a chance to at least address the summit virtually in the wake of the fact that President Putin will be probably present here for the summit?
Look, I think that will be for the Indian presidents to decide. But what we appreciate is that India has repeatedly made it clear it will try to do its utmost to stop the conflict.
Okay.
The war must end, and the Russian troops must withdraw. This invasion must stop.
So now that your relationship with Russia has really gone completely upended and it has gone to its lowest ebb, how are you then facing the China challenge, which is also a challenge for India? And we are also seeing Russia and China getting closer day by day. They have announced like a no limits friendship. Does that bother European Union in a way that these two countries are getting together and probably forming a grouping, or you think businesses can be done, at least with China, the economic ties can be maintained while strategically you can confront them?
Look, the European Union has with India a complex and important relationship. We usually try to summarize it under three definitions, let's say, in the sense that China is a partner, and it's an indispensable partner in addressing challenges such as the fight against climate change.
Right.
Then it's a competitor, and in that respect, what we need is to establish a level playing field. And finally, it's a systemic rival, because the system of governance in China is clearly different. And it's not underpinned by the same values of democracy, of representative democracy, individual rights, as we understand them, be it in Europe or in India. When it comes to the Ukrainian conflict, what we ask is for China not to fuel the conflict, and therefore not to supply weapons, for instance, to Russia. That's extremely important. Right. It's important that Russia doesn't get this sort of support, be it from China or anywhere else, and that China is also a positive player contributing to the cessation of hostility and the withdrawal of Russian forces from the Ukrainian territory.
Exactly. So that brings to my next question. How is the European Union viewing this Chinese peace plan, so to say, which President Xi Jinping is talking about? We've not seen results really happening out of it, but do you believe in that peace plan?
Well, look, I think it's not exactly a peace plan. It's a series of of positions, of Chinese positions.
Okay.
Some of these positions are interesting, and the discussion can continue. But the point is that Ukrainians have a right to decide about their own future.
Okay.
And I think the initial proposition must be that we have an aggressor and a victim, and we have an invasion ongoing, and we certainly cannot condone an invasion, and Russian troops must withdraw.
Now, Ambassador, let me shift your focus to the trade and business ties between India and European Union. Now, coming to the fact that there's a long FTA negotiations going on for a very long time, but they were resumed, and now next week we are going to see another round of negotiations taking place. How hopeful are you of the free trade agreement going through, considering the fact that India is now really, playing the game? It has already signed deals with Australia and the UAE. So how hopeful is the EU as far as FTA is concerned? And are you also planning to probably go for a phase 1, phase 2, like the Australians did?
Look, the negotiations are ongoing, and the fifth round is going to take place very soon, next week, here in Delhi. What I can say is that there has been progress, particularly the last round. We have seen some signals.
Okay.
We need to find bridging solutions. At the same time, it's a fact, it's a very complex negotiation. So I think it's understandable that it takes time. We have the political commitment at the highest level. We have the full engagement and clear determination from both sides, from the negotiating teams. So I think we need to work together to get to a positive result. But what we are aiming at is an ambitious and comprehensive and balanced free trade agreement. And I think as European Union, we have a good record in negotiating and concluding these FTAs to the benefit of all sides. And India is also committed, as you say. Recently, a number of FTAs have been concluded and finalized. So I think the scene is set for serious work aiming at a positive conclusion.
Also, Ambassador, we'll not go into the nitty-gritties of the negotiations because they are still on. But do you think that with the changing environment, geopolitically and otherwise, will issues like climate change, labor standards, they be part of the free trade agreement between India and the EU?
When it comes to the European Union, issues such as trade and sustainable development are always part of our free trade agreement. So that certainly will be part of the conversation.
Okay. And what about investments? I believe there was a talk about 5-6 years back on the FDI part of it.
We are actually negotiating 3 agreements. We only mentioned the free trade agreement, but the other 2 are equally important. We are also negotiating an investment for an agreement on the protection of investments and an agreement on geographical indication. So I think the full spectrum of the economic
So there'll be 3 separate packs. Oh, okay. That'll be interesting. And my final question to you, Ambassador. We've seen that, India has now made Indo-Pacific policy its cornerstone, in its defense and foreign policy. The US Defense Secretary was recently touring Asia, and he came to India where he said that, Indo-Pacific is US military's #1 priority area. But actually being the Indo-Pacific player for European Union, how do you see this region advancing in the next 5-10 years, considering there's a China, there's a Russia, and there are other littorals as well?
Look, the European Union is also a stakeholder in the Indo-Pacific because, as you know, the European Union is a large trading bloc, and a huge proportion of our trade is actually passing via the Indo-Pacific.
Right.
So we feel we are a stakeholder, and we want to contribute to peace and stability of the region. And I think our vision for the Indo-Pacific is remarkably convergent with the Indian vision. So a future of prosperity underpinned by respect for international law, including the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And I think this convergence, which is based on our shared belief in the principles of the UN Charter, I think this convergence was made evident by the participation of Dr. Jaishankar, the Minister for External Affairs, in both editions of the Indo-Pacific Conference, which was organized by the European Union last year and this year, very recently in Sweden. Sweden is holding the rotating presidency. I think the minister made a very topical intervention about the future of the Indo-Pacific. It's a future of cooperation. It's based on a positive vision. It's based on values of transparency, inclusiveness, and I think the European Union and India are natural partners in that.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador, for that. That was Ambassador of European Union to India, Ambassador Ugo Astuto, talking to us about India-European Union, bilateral ties, and also the fact that how the Indo-Pacific region is going to develop in the coming future. For ABP Live, this is Nayanima Basu.
Thank you.
Thank you.